The Galactic Vote. The Galactic Council chamber was a masterpiece of ancient engineering, a vast dome suspended in the void of space. Holograms flickered above polished stone, displaying the countless worlds that had gathered under the unified rule of the Council. At the center of the chamber stood Supreme Arbiter Zalvora, her many-limbed form draped in ceremonial robes, her voice resonating through the vast hall. "The matter of Earth stands before us today," she announced, her mandibles clicking in measured precision. A species of warriors, unpredictable and untamed. Their rapid technological evolution makes them a growing concern. We must act now before they become a true threat. The gathered representatives murmured in agreement. Seated in tiers that stretched into the darkness above, each species had sent their finest diplomats, some cold and calculating, others cruel and eager. The reptilian Drakthar, towering and clad in ceremonial armor, let out a low hiss of satisfaction. The cybernetic Vorkin, their bodies fused with machinery, processed war calculations with glowing eyes. The telepathic Zyvar, shrouded in flowing robes, probed the thoughts of others and found no dissent. All had come to the same conclusion. Humanity had no place among the stars. The Drakthar warlord, Lord Kryzkar, stepped forward. His voice was like gravel on steel. "We have observed their wars, their endless conflicts, their insatiable hunger for dominance. They have fought each other for thousands of cycles, and yet each war only makes them stronger. Imagine if their rage was ever turned outward." He gestured sharply, and a display appeared above him. Scenes of human history flashing in quick succession. Wars, atrocities, weapons of mass destruction. The chamber watched in silent judgment. The Zyvar Grand Seer floated forward next, her voice like a whisper in the minds of all present. "I have touched their thoughts. They are creatures of chaos, yet they adapt like no other. Their minds are open to change, to revolution. If left unchecked, they will not just challenge us, they will surpass us." Murmurs of unease filled the chamber. No species had ever risen so fast. No species had ever defied fate so completely. The Supreme Arbiter raised a limb for silence. "Then the motion is clear. The vote shall be cast." One by one, each species announced their decision. "Enslave them. Enslave them. Enslave them." 100 voices, 100 declarations. Not a single dissenting vote. It was done. The largest war coalition in history was assembled within days. The Drakthar war fleets would take Earth's skies. The Vorkin would suppress human technology. The Zyvar would shatter their minds. A swift and merciful conquest, they thought. A simple matter. They were wrong. The invasion begins. It started with fire. On the first day of the invasion, 1,000 ships blackened Earth's sky. Alien war machines descended upon cities, casting long shadows over the terrified populace. Plasma strikes reduced skyscrapers to rubble, and entire continents fell into chaos. The humans, outmatched in technology, were expected to surrender within hours. But they did not. The resistance began immediately, not with organized armies. Those had been the first targets, but with something far worse. Unyielding defiance. Small pockets of survivors fought back with everything they had. Civilians took up arms, using their knowledge of terrain and guerrilla tactics to devastating effect. Military forces, despite being overwhelmed, refused to die easily. The invaders found themselves ambushed in their own occupied zones, their supply lines cut, their war machines sabotaged overnight. Then came the counterattacks. Within days, human scientists had captured alien weapons and reverse-engineered them. Military engineers hijacked enemy communication signals, feeding the invaders false data. Hackers infiltrated Vorkin systems, shutting down entire fleets with a single line of code. And then the impossible happened. A Zyvar mindbreaker, one of the most powerful telepaths in the known galaxy, attempted to shatter the will of a captured human. The process was meant to be absolute, a permanent rewriting of thought. But instead of submission, he found something horrifying. The human fought back. Not just resisted, fought. Drowned the telepath in memories of war, of pain, of sheer, unbreakable will. The Zyvar screamed as his own mind collapsed, driven mad by the depths of human resilience. Word spread like wildfire. The invincible Zyvar had met something they could not control. The unstoppable Vorkin had lost entire fleets to a species that learned faster than any other. The mighty Drakthar warlords watched in horror as human forces began winning battles they were never supposed to survive. Humanity was no longer just resisting. They were winning. And the Galactic Council, so sure of their victory, began to realize their mistake. A mistake that would cost them everything. The fall of the invaders. The first sign that something had gone horribly wrong for the invaders was silence. The Galactic Council had expected a steady stream of victory reports. Instead, their fleets had gone dark. Entire battalions had stopped responding. Ships that had once hovered above Earth in oppressive numbers now burned in the atmosphere, crashing like fallen gods. At first, they dismissed it as an isolated incident, pockets of resistance that would soon be stamped out. But then, the casualty reports started coming in, and they didn't stop. The first great defeat. On the outskirts of what was once Washington, D.C., a massive Drakthar command station had been established. The reptilian warlords had converted the ruins into their primary military hub, assuming Earth's resistance would collapse before they ever needed to relocate. They were wrong. In the dead of night, the station went dark. Not from a battle, not from an orbital strike, but from something worse. It began with an alert. Security feeds showed nothing unusual. Then power failures spread through the outpost, followed by communications going dead. Panic set in among the Drakthar warriors as reports trickled in. Guards missing from their posts. Entire squads gone without a trace. Then the first explosion. The control tower detonated from within, taking half the station's officers with it. The Drakthar scrambled to restore order, barking commands, sealing exits. But it didn't matter. The humans were already inside. They moved like shadows, striking with military precision. Not an army, not a reckless charge, just a handful of highly trained operatives who had infiltrated the station undetected. Using stolen Vorkin cloaking technology and their own knowledge of guerrilla warfare, they systematically shut down the command post, killing the warlords in their own fortress. When reinforcements finally arrived, the station was empty. The humans had vanished into the night, leaving only one message scrawled on the walls in alien script. You should have killed us all. The cyber war. While the Drakthar were suffering humiliating defeats on the ground, the Vorkin, a race of machine-enhanced beings, were facing something they had never encountered before, a war they couldn't control. The Vorkin had been assigned to cripple Earth's digital infrastructure. Within days of the invasion, they had seized satellites, disrupted power grids, and shut down human military command networks. Their plan was simple. Take away Earth's ability to communicate, and resistance would crumble. But humanity had something the Vorkin didn't expect. Hackers. Across the world, thousands of human cyber warriors, once criminals, once rogue programmers, once independent security experts, united under a single purpose, to turn the enemy's technology against them. They began with small victories, seizing control of minor surveillance systems, cutting off Vorkin patrols from their networks. But within weeks, they did the impossible. They hacked into the Vorkin warships themselves. One by one, ships started falling under human control. Some were forced into self-destruction. Others were rewired mid-battle, their weapons turned against their own fleets. The Vorkin, a species that had never known true cyber warfare, found themselves outmatched in their own domain. The final blow came when a group of human hackers infiltrated the Vorkin command relay, which linked all their ships to a centralized AI. The moment they broke through, the entire Vorkin fleet froze. Every ship, every drone, every machine went silent. Then, in one synchronized moment, the ships began turning their guns on their own allies. The Vorkin had lost control. The mind war. Desperation set in among the Galactic Council. The Zyvar, the most feared telepaths in the galaxy, were sent in to break humanity's will. Their plan was elegant. Erase resistance at its source. It started with targeted strikes. Zyvar mindbreakers infiltrated captured human cities, using their abilities to shatter the minds of resistance leaders. One by one, they forced generals, scientists, and soldiers to surrender without a fight. At first, it worked. Then it stopped working. The Zyvar soon discovered something terrifying. Human minds fought back. It wasn't just resistance, it was outright defiance. Humans, unlike any other species, had the ability to adapt to telepathic attacks. What should have been a one-sided mental domination became a war of wills. The more the Zyvar pushed, the harder humanity resisted. Then came the real nightmare. Some humans didn't just resist. Some humans learned. The Zyvar discovered that prolonged exposure to their abilities led to something they had never encountered before: humans developing telepathic resistance. Some individuals even mirrored their abilities, throwing the attacks back with devastating force. The first Zyvar to encounter this anomaly suffered a fate worse than death. His mind was shattered by his own powers, turned against him by a human who had no business wielding such abilities. The rest soon followed. The Zyvar broke before humanity did. The Council's realization. The Galactic Council watched all of this unfold with growing horror. They had come to enslave Earth. They had expected an easy victory. Now, their fleets were being destroyed. Their armies were being annihilated. Their most powerful warriors were being outmatched. And humanity was only getting stronger. For the first time in recorded history, the Galactic Council understood fear. Their enemy wasn't just surviving. Their enemy was winning. And soon, the Council would have no choice but to do what no species in galactic history had ever done before. They would have to beg. Humanity strikes back. For the first time in recorded galactic history, the great fleets of the Galactic Council were in full retreat. What had begun as a campaign of conquest had turned into a desperate fight for survival. Humanity, outnumbered, outgunned, and supposedly outmatched, was not only resisting. They were hunting their invaders down. The counteroffensive begins. The first true counterstrike came from Earth's first interstellar fleet, a fleet that weeks ago didn't exist. Humanity had learned fast. Too fast. Captured Vorkan warships had been studied, dismantled, and rebuilt with human modifications. The same vessels that once hovered over Earth like gods of war were now crewed by humans, piloted by humans, and aimed at alien worlds. The first target, the Drakthar fortress moon, Zarkrath, a strategic supply base that fueled much of the enemy war effort. Zarkrath had never been touched by war. The Drakthar considered it impenetrable, its defenses unbreakable. They never expected their own ships to turn against them. In a brutal lightning assault, the first wave of human-controlled warships emerged from the void, firing before the Drakthar even realized they were under attack. Orbital defense platforms fell in minutes. Supply lines were cut. The fortress was bombarded with its own stolen weapons. By the time the Drakthar High Command could react, the fortress was already lost. The humans left only one message, broadcast across every Drakthar frequency. This was mercy, the galactic exodus. Panic spread across the Council's worlds like wildfire. Planets that once cheered for humanity's enslavement now feared its vengeance. Entire civilizations began evacuating. Some fled into deep space, abandoning their homeworlds in terror. Others tried to sue for peace, hoping to beg for mercy before it was too late. The Council itself was in chaos. The Vorkan leadership, once proud, calculating strategists, sent frantic transmissions, pleading for negotiations. Their once mighty fleets were now scattered, and their entire cybernetic network was compromised. The Zyvar, once masters of the mind, were broken. Many had gone mad, trying to dominate humans, their own minds burned out by the psychic backlash. Those who survived sealed themselves off from the galaxy, terrified of facing humanity again. And the Drakthar? The proudest warriors in the Council? They were in full collapse. Their warlords, once so eager to invade Earth, now turned their fleets homeward, not to regroup, but to defend their own planets. Because humanity wasn't stopping. Earth wasn't just fighting for survival anymore. Earth was winning a war. The fall of the Council's stronghold. The final test came when humanity launched its boldest move yet, a direct strike at Caltheros, the Galactic Council's capital world. Even with their fleets in disarray, the Council still believed Caltheros was untouchable. It had stood for millennia, defended by the most advanced weapons in the galaxy. But defenses don't matter when your enemy has already infiltrated you from within. Human spies, former slaves taken from conquered worlds, now trained in sabotage, had already disabled the planetary shields by the time Earth's fleet arrived. And when they did, it was over in hours. The greatest seat of power in the galaxy burned under human bombardment. Council leaders tried to flee, but there was nowhere left to run. And then, the final act. The supreme arbiter of the Galactic Council, Zalvora herself, was dragged before a human commander. For the first time in her life, she knew true terror. Her voice trembled as she spoke. "Human, please. We can negotiate. We can offer reparations. We can." The human commander simply looked at her, cold and unyielding. "You voted to enslave us," he said, his voice devoid of emotion. "Now you beg." She tried to respond, but he raised a hand to silence her. "You didn't show mercy. You didn't listen when we begged. Now, we return the favor." The last thing the supreme arbiter of the Galactic Council saw was the shadow of a human soldier standing over her. And then, darkness. The new galactic order. With the fall of Caltheros, the war was over. Humanity stood victorious. Every species that had voted to enslave Earth now knelt before it. But humanity didn't wipe them out. No, that would have been too easy. Instead, they made an example. The Galactic Council was dismantled, its former leaders either executed or forced into servitude. Worlds that had enslaved others were now rebuilding what they had destroyed. And Earth took its place as the new seat of power in the galaxy. The war was over. Humanity had won. And now, they would decide the future of the stars. The Empire of Earth. The galaxy had changed. Once the Galactic Council had ruled with absolute power. They had believed themselves eternal, indomitable, absolute. Now, their great fleets were dust, their warlords dead, their empires crumbling. And at the heart of it all, standing over the ruins of those who once sought to enslave them. Humanity, the trials of the conquered. On Earth, the remnants of the Galactic Council were gathered in chains. Once mighty warlords, telepathic masters, cybernetic overlords. Now nothing more than prisoners awaiting judgment. The world watched. Billions of humans, once hunted, now stood as witnesses to their fallen oppressors. Across the stars, conquered species tuned in as well, eager to see what fate awaited those who had ruled them with an iron fist. The human tribunal was not cruel, but it was not merciful either. The Vorkin, who had sought to cripple Earth's technology, were stripped of their own. No longer would they dominate through machines. They would have to relearn how to live without their cybernetic enhancements. The Zyvar, who had tried to break the minds of humans, found themselves locked away in deep space prisons, their telepathic abilities nullified. And the Drakthar, who had once reveled in the slaughter of weaker species, they were given a choice: serve or perish. Most chose service. The others? Their bones joined the ashes of their empire. Justice had been served, but humanity was not finished. The rise of the Terran Dominion. With the Council shattered, a power vacuum spread across the galaxy. Entire systems, once ruled by fear, now drifted in uncertainty. Some saw Earth's rise as an opportunity. They swore loyalty before they could be conquered. Others tried to resist. None succeeded. Humanity had learned too much from war. They had fought too hard, suffered too much, and adapted too well. Within a year, Earth had not only crushed the last remnants of resistance, they had rewritten the structure of the galaxy itself. The new order had a name: the Terran Dominion. No longer was Earth just another world in the stars. It was the center of galactic power, ruling over hundreds of planets and thousands of species. And unlike the Council before them, they did not rule with empty promises or weak decrees. They ruled with strength, the last stand of the free fleets. There were still those who refused to submit. In the outer rim of the galaxy, the last surviving generals of the Council gathered one final fleet. These were the desperate, the proud, the foolish. They believed they could rally the remnants of the old powers, strike at Earth, and reclaim their former glory. They believed humanity would show weakness now that they had won. They were wrong. When their fleet emerged from hyperspace, they found nothing but silence. No defenses, no response. And then, from the depths of space, a new human war fleet appeared. Not stolen ships, not reverse-engineered alien vessels. These were purely human creations, weapons unlike anything the galaxy had seen. Ships designed by Earth, for Earth, built with the knowledge stolen from 100 conquered species. The battle lasted less than an hour. By the time it was over, the last remnants of the old Galactic Council were nothing more than wreckage drifting in the void. The final rebellion had been crushed. The galaxy belonged to Earth, a message to the stars. Once, the Galactic Council had gathered to enslave humanity. Now, a new council gathered in its place. Not a gathering of oppressors, but of rulers. Terran rulers. The Supreme Commander of Earth stood at the center of the chamber, addressing a galaxy that was still adjusting to its new reality. This is not an age of mercy. This is not an age of weakness. This is the age of Earth. The words echoed across 1,000 worlds. Some listened in terror, others in awe, but all understood. The reign of the Galactic Council was over. The age of the Terran Dominion had begun, and humanity, once nearly enslaved, was now the master of the stars. Epilogue: The Legend of Earth. Centuries later, historians would tell the story of the species that defied the galaxy, of the war that changed the stars forever, of the moment when every species voted to enslave humanity, and how, in the end, they all pleaded for mercy instead. But mercy had never been an option, not after what they had done, because in the end, humanity had proven a simple, undeniable truth. You do not conquer Earth. Earth conquers you.